Welcome, everybody. So, I think I'm going to get started because the first couple of stuff is just what we always do. And so if folks are coming in a little bit later, that way we'll be sure to stay on track. So welcome, everyone. Let me get my PowerPoint set up. It's great to see everybody again. Okay. So if everyone wouldn't mind naming themselves with their organization, you can click on your box and choose rename. As always, Caitlin is our tech person, and so you can message her directly through the chat. And here's who we are. It's a great group, really consistent. Attending the Echoes, really appreciate your dedication. And I don't know, do we have anyone from LANL Foundation here who would like to welcome? Okay, well, thanks to them, we're all here. So we're now in our April 14th. I guess it's our fourth session. We're going to be talking about data collection options, and the Echo next or this coming Tuesday is the interactive focus groups. So this is a great time we've coordinated that way to learn about how to do a really effective and fun focus group that will be on Tuesday. And then next month, we're going to consider embedding. How do you make evaluation just a routine part of your organization? So that's what's coming up. That's where we are. And you know us, it's still the same us. Okay, and then the Echo, I think, just as a reminder, that happens. The email went out. Please let us know in the chat if you're not receiving the Echo reminders so that we can make sure that you're on the list. Okay, so as you know, the ongoing stuff is your mission time. We're always looking for people who will share a little piece of what they're working on. And so please let your facilitator know, or your facilitator may encourage you to share something, and we'll get that set up that would be for not Tuesday, but in May. And then, of course, you have the opportunity to consult with us between sessions. I also wanted to make a plug for an in-person event that we're having next Friday. If you happen to be near Albuquerque, it would be great if you might want to stop by. This is for our fellowship program. So that's where students partner with community organizations and they work on a project through the whole academic year. And oh, that's the wrong date. That should be April 22nd. Sorry about that. But Caitlin is going to put the link in the chat if you can stop by. That'd be great. It's a really fun event. Okay, so let's see how we're doing in terms of this program. This is the feedback from last month. So we hit the level right. That's very exciting to see. And yeah, we do seem to be, this was a good session in terms of getting the amount right. So the pluses were folks like the clear presentation, helpful template, and facilitator feedback. There were questions about how do the parts fit together, and if we can maybe tie it together better at the end, which we're going to try to do both of those this month. In terms of tying it all together, this is a picture of what an evaluation system, the elements of an evaluation system. And so I just want to point out that this looks like there's a lot going on, and there is, and you've already tackled a bunch of it. So you've worked on your logic model, You've worked on a rubric. We met one other time. Your evaluation question as well. And so what we're trying to do is give you all these pieces so that you can put it together. And when it's all put together, what it's going to look like is a logic model tells us what data, well, it gives us the evaluation questions. That should be that arrow that tells us what data collection we should do. And so here's 3 options. And Camille is going to tell us more about the different kinds of options as the main part of this session. So that the data collection gives us data, which we then apply to a rubric, which then tells us how we're doing. And so the idea is that once you have that in place, then you're set up for continuous quality improvement, a deeper understanding, which may affect your theory of change, with this, which this whole machine sits on, and then also program adjustments, and then you go again. So that's a visual that will hopefully let you see how this all fits together. And notice that there are people at every stage. And so our topic for next month is going to be, how do you get those people involved? How do you make that something that everyone is on the same page and working towards? Okay, so here's what we have for today. It does say focusing the evaluation debrief. So I think we'll have time to talk a little bit about where we've been. And then Camille is going to present on data collection options. Just like last time, you'll have time to go out on your own with your organization to work on a suggested guide to what your data collection should be. And then we'll debrief in small groups and then debrief as a group. So that setup seemed to work well. We're going to try that again. Let me just stop the share though now and see if anyone has any questions or any reflections on last month's topic, which was focusing the evaluation.
Hi, Melissa. This is Zach.
Hey, Zach.
Unfortunately, I missed the last session, and I think I had sent out an email. Could you clarify where we are? I mean, I think this book is phenomenal, and I was very helpful in the use of developing the rubrics. But are we planning on? Is there a certain chapter that we need to have read? Are we going to be discussing that, or where does the book fit into our collective work?
So that's a great question. I'm glad you like the book. Really, the things that we got out of the book for our own organization and what we wanted to share with other organizations is the idea of mission time, which, he just has a great way of developing that idea. And then the rubrics. And it was a book that once we read it, it changed how we did evaluation. And so we wanted to share that with you. Pretty much we've covered what we're going to cover out of that book.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And the person who wrote it was a program director at a foundation, and it's like he wanted to assemble mostly the rubrics, but just all these tidbits of wisdom, which is so I encourage all of you to just put it somewhere where you can pick it up and read just a little bit of it. It's very accessible. It's very engagingly written. So
and I would just say that the logic model, when I was introduced to it a few years ago, and I love how you guys have really honed my thinking around that. Was a big aha. The rubrics have been equally so, and I feel like that is the next phase in our program evaluation collective work with our team. So thanks for sort of forcing us into thinking in that direction. It's going to be a huge asset to our program.
Not forcing, gently guiding.
Well, gently guiding. I should say nudging. Yes, nudging. Forcing it has negative connotations. I meant it in a positive way,
Yes.
but yeah, gently nudging us because I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts? And also, I wanted to give anyone from LANL Foundation, if you want to speak up, as a chance, because we always enjoy your welcome if you want to do that. Oh, you're muted.
Hello, greetings, everybody. I just love coming to this space and seeing everybody here. And thank you for being here, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Okay, thanks, Kirsty. Okay, so I'm going to go back, but I think that we're ready to turn this over to Camille for our main topic. Yes. So Camille, do you want to share from your own computer? Or do you want me to operate the slides? You're muted.
I can share. I do have the PDF, I think. Okay. So, okay. All right. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about some data collection. And so our learning objectives for today would be to brainstorm what information you need to answer each evaluation question. Understand the difference between qualitative and quantitative data. And we're going to talk a little bit about the value and place for each and how they can work together. We want to identify who has the best information to answer each evaluation question, and also choose the most effective way to collect this information that we're interested in. So the first objective, using your evaluation question to begin to select data collection methods. So last time we met, we talked about our evaluation question and really focusing our evaluation. But now, how do we answer that question? And so we're just going to kind of revisit this image that Melissa talked about. And so where that red circle is where we're at today. So your evaluation questions should drive your data collection method. I know sometimes we might get stuck in thinking that everything has to be done through a survey. And we might begin with, oh, we'll do a survey. But I think we really should consider our evaluation questions, and then from that point, move forward to what is the best way to answer that question. So some examples of questions that might present different data collection methods are, can we see a change in behaviors after participating in programming? Do clients' skills increase upon receiving education? Do systems work effectively? Are there barriers for clients attending services? And what affects client outcomes? So if you have any experience with data collection, you might already be primed to think about what methods would be best to answer each of those questions. But now we're just going to talk a little bit more about how we can arrive at those conclusions if we don't have that experience. So consider your evaluation question. What information do you need to answer the evaluation question? Is it a yes or no question, or are there meaningful categories that you want to kind of get a range from, or a score on an assessment rubric? So that would be quantitative data. And this type of data you want to collect from everyone, or at least a representative sample, so you can get an adequate answer to your question. The upsides is that it's relatively easy to collect and analyze. However, it rarely captures complexity. So there might be things that we're missing. And to that point, you can only measure what you ask. So we might have blind spots in this. So it's it's really easy to collect and analyze, but there are some drawbacks to it. It does give us those numbers that funders and people like to see, but there are some drawbacks. So reflecting back to your evaluation question, does the answer require an explanation? Is it a why question or a how question, like a process, or an experience, like a what question? Do you need examples and stories? If so, this is qualitative data, and you want to collect this qualitative data from different subject positions. And so what that's talking about is just making sure that we are not collecting from the same type of person or same type of respondent, but people from a variety of experiences. And so we can get a richer picture of what we're asking. This is a little bit more, this method is a little bit more time consuming to analyze. However, it does provide lots of depth and rich detail, and it also will help us see things that maybe we hadn't considered, or solutions that we haven't considered, or issues that we haven't considered. So it leaves it open to more. So it's important to utilize both methods. Quantitative and qualitative data, they work really well together. Quantitative outcomes are a lot more believable to some people, but that qualitative data can provide a little bit more detail than the quantitative data allows. You can use one to inform or elaborate the other. So you can use qualitative data, a focus group, for example, to help you build a survey. So maybe you don't know what questions to ask or what questions are most appropriate, but you can use those focus groups to inform your survey. And then you can even go back and do a focus group with the survey to make sure the way that you constructed it makes sense for those participants that you're trying to reach. So using both is a good long-term strategy to evaluation, but of course, you should just start with one. So who do we collect the data from? I know a lot of times we might think that only our clients or participants can answer the questions that we have, but I think we can be open to a range of people who can answer these questions. So some examples, of course, are program participants. You can also ask staff because they work one-on-one with clients, especially if you need to get some information, some different type of information. You can ask board members, partners, funders, other organizations, community members. You can ask a school district, state agencies. So there's a variety of places where you can get the information that you're looking for. And sometimes you can collect information for the same question from different, like we said, like locations. So maybe program participants and staff members could help you answer the same question in the same evaluation. So who has this info? So let's take a look at these examples. So if the evaluation question is, are parents gaining new skills and knowledge? What information do you need to answer the question? So for example, and it could be something different, maybe we're looking at an assessment of skills. So who has that info? Parents. Is there a different way to get this information? There might be, right? Are parents gaining new skills and knowledge? We could also ask people who are dealing with the parents, on a personal basis or observing these behaviors. So for example, we'll drop down to number 3. Is there an improved child-parent bond? So we could ask the parents if they've seen an improvement in their bonding with their child, but we can also talk to staff who witness this and can maybe, sometimes when people self-report their behaviors, they might overestimate. So sometimes it's good to get somebody with a little bit more of an objective perspective. And so it's important to think about the different places where you can get the information. And the value that each sort of location has for your evaluation. So we've talked about what the question is, where we're going to go to get the information, what participants. Now you want to think about how you're going to retrieve this information. So methods of data collection. So there's a variety of methods of data collection. You're probably very familiar with surveys. So this is individual responses to written questions. So most of the time, these are predetermined answers and participants select from those predetermined answers. You can also add open-ended questions to things that you might not already have the answers to, so to speak. There's also focus groups where participants interact with each other in conversations, and open-ended, and this is helpful for open-ended data collection activities. And there's a lot more ways that you can be creative eliciting that information from participants. And so I think in the, Melissa, remind me the
echo? The echo?
The echo, yes. The echo this week will give you some ideas for how to elicit different information in these focus groups, the interactive focus groups. They're really cool. You can also do interviews with one-on-one guided conversation. You want to also make sure that these are open-ended questions, because if they're closed-ended questions, they might be more appropriate for a survey. So you have to have some way of determining which you're going to use. You can also use letters, reflections, and drawings, and this is all something that you can assign to participants or do in an interactive focus group. You can also collect data from administrative tracking, so things that you're already doing. Demographics, output, so attendance, total time in program, completion rate, outcomes, so you can look at, if you're collecting data on exit, you can look at housing, employment, graduation, college enrollment. Of course, this requires you to have these systems built into your programming, but they are helpful in doing evaluation work. You can look at assessments and tests. So this is when you're trying to assess knowledge, skills, and behavior change. You can look at student portfolios. So outputs as projects, outcomes like knowledge and skills. Further, you can review client files. So, you can take a sample of your clients and look at attendance, the modality to which they're participating. So are they coming in online? Are they coming in face-to-face? You can look at progress on their goals. And these are less invasive because you're not asking anything of the participants. You're just already keeping track of this data for yourself and for your evaluation purposes. Something that people don't often consider is an in-depth case study. So you look at one participant's experience, outputs, and outcomes as documented in administrative records. And this kind of shows what a typical experience is like, and it can highlight some of the details. Perhaps it can help give case or give examples for quantitative data. So it can be used in that way as well. You can also do observations. So how do people interact in a space? What is engagement like? So these are things that are also less invasive and you don't require much for participants except for you being there to do it. So let's go through these data collection methods and kind of look at, are they quantitative or are they qualitative? So administrative records, that's a quantitative. We're looking at attendance, we're looking at rate of length of participation, things like that. Clinical assessments or tests already used, so that would be quantitative data. Letters and drawings from participants, that's qualitative. Surveys can be quantitative and qualitative, especially if we're including those open-ended questions. Interviews and focus groups, that's qualitative data. File chart reviews, that's qualitative data. And in-depth case studies are also qualitative data. So these are all great methods to be able to utilize, just depending on your questions. So we also want to consider the timing for data collection, especially if you're launching an evaluation or you have you're beginning to collect data and you're trying to consider what are my options? I want to get this information, but participants have already completed the program. While you can collect information retrospectively so they can reflect back on their experience in the program, they can analyze how well or how much they've changed in the course of the programming. And you can also do pre and post. So you have to start with the client or participants in the beginning of a program. You assess their skills, knowledge, behaviors at the beginning, and then after the programming is done, you would see if those knowledge, skills, behaviors, etc., attitudes have changed. So in the conversation of quantitative and qualitative data, which is better? Of course, it's best to have both. And they work really well with each other. So just consider that as an option to do both. Here's an example of some retrospective quantitative data, how to get some retrospective quantitative data. So here is a scale, and it has a section before the fellowship and then after the fellowship. So participants would rate their knowledge before and how they feel now. And so that's a way to, maybe you didn't get to collect the data as they entered the program, but this is a good way to kind of see where their skills and knowledge and stuff has changed throughout the course if you didn't have the chance to collect that data beforehand. Now, if you've never collected data through drawings or images, it's really a great way to collect data from people who maybe have language differences or accessibility differences, or it's just more of a creative endeavor and we're trying to see different things. This was a product of an interactive focus group where staff from an organization drew or visualized where they would like to see the organization to go. So they did a now and then a then. And so it really highlighted what the issues were and where sort of some problems were, how they saw the organization, and also where they would like to see the organization go. And so it helped the management really solidify a vision for their organization and plan towards that. And also it showed what was important to the staff for their for staff retention. Here's another example of a post program analysis. And you can see that we have the smiley faces. I like this one because there's 3 options, and it really is helpful for just describing how people feel about something. And it's a little bit easier for some people to do something with a visual to it, so we don't have to limit ourselves. So from evaluation questions to data collection. So let's see where we are at time. Okay, so we want to talk about how we can go from our question to our options for data collection. So here is an example. Do clients' attitudes change after programming in the first column? Now, there can be quantitative ways to measure this, and there can be qualitative ways to measure this. So maybe you can think of, I'll just run through this one real quick and say we wanted to do just a survey, counts predetermined. We have an attitude change scale, and we want to ask the clients. So that would be who has the information, the clients, and then our options for data collection would be survey methods. How can we make our program better? Yes, you could do it quantitatively with a survey, and if you have some options, maybe you have some options already, you're limited in what you can do, you could do a survey. But if you haven't decided how you're going to improve your programming, you might want to do some qualitative data and maybe do some focus groups and help clients really mold what programming they'd like to see. And so you can ask clients, you could do a focus group with clients who has the information. You can also do it with staff because they have a different perspective as well. And I mean, you could also do it with funders or people from the community or other stakeholders. You could do all of them as well. And so that would be who you ask, and then the options for data collection. Like I said, it could be a survey if you already have your choices, or focus groups. It could also be interviews as well. So there's different options to answer the questions, but you really have to be able to think about what is going to best get you the information that you want. So let's see if you all
Camille, can you stop for questions?
Yeah.
And if you stop the share, then we can all see each other.
So does anybody have any questions on your data collection options?
I'll just have a comment. I had another aha moment, so thank you. And this is, and that is, so I like the retrospective survey that has I've thought about going back and saying, where were you in September and now where are you in April? But I hadn't thought about putting them into that form. I can see that being very powerful because it tends to just jog people's memories, and I would imagine that that's tremendously effective. So I'm anxious to learn more about those where you have the Likert scales on either side.
I think, Melissa, that's one of your scales, right?
Actually, that was Michelle Bloodworth. She's a external evaluator, and we had Kellogg funding the first 2 years of our existence. So we were able to hire an external evaluator. And yeah, that was her idea. I think it was a great way to do a retrospective, to have it. I mean, she designed it that way. And that was a survey that was going to students, graduate students, so they had no trouble, navigating it.
And I guess that this is where we dig down. I mean, ideally, if those quantitative measures were associated with a rubric and success criteria, then that would really be even more descriptive, right? Because then the participants could say, because it is a little bit of a challenge to say, well, geez, I think I was a 2 and now I'm a 4. So what does that 2 and 4 mean? And would you associate those numbers with a rubric, perhaps?
Well, so you could, and Camille, if you could share that one instrument again.
Because I'm going to design one of these here in the next 2 weeks for real use. This is going to be.
So one of the things I really like about this instrument is that she defined the numbers. So it wasn't just like, your own scale of from how well do you know it, 0, I don't know anything.
Okay.
It was very specific. And I think that helps a bit. Yeah. With how you want people to respond. And I've also seen people use rubrics themselves and let people circle the one where they feel like they are. So
I think just to add to it too, I think the defining of the numbers really helps keep people, I guess, a little bit more honest with their responses, because it's very specific to what the criteria of the number rating is.
Yeah. So we had a few other hands up. Camille, do you see those?
Oh, yes. I think Myra had hers up first.
Hi, and I'm sorry, I blanked, my system stopped responding in the middle of the response to Zach, so I hope this isn't repetitive to that in any way. I am curious why you consider, excuse me, that threw me off. I had a slide open somewhere, there we go. On your qualitative versus quantitative, slide 28.
Okay.
I'm curious why you feel you cannot get quantitative information out of interviews, focus groups, file chart reviews. I would think that there would be a significant amount of quantitative information you could draw from those sources.
Quantitative, I'm sorry. quantitative data from administrative
But you
records?
have, what kind of information is it? The data collection method, and then you list that qualitative, you list interview and focus groups and file chart reviews. I would consider that that is both quantitative, a source of quantitative and qualitative, both of those items. Why do you consider only qualitative for those source points?
So for the interviews, it has to do with of how many people you're talking to. So it's hard to say, if you're only doing interviews with 10 people, it's kind of hard to say out of 1,000 people, these 10 people can speak to these 1,000. So it's more of like the individual experience, but I don't know. There could be some use for.
I'll give you an example, if that might help. So if you're doing a survey of stakeholders and you bring together, you're trying to open a community center, you bring together a bunch of people, 50 people show up to the meeting, identify themselves as we're interested, put us on your list. Every time that group is polled, comes to the table in any way, whether it's a survey online or they're actually at a town meeting, that group of people is going to provide information, and they're going to be a key group of stakeholders. So I think maybe it's the difference between types of data, but for me, I'm going to be able to get qualitative data, quantitative and qualitative data. So those people may assign something and say, how happy are you with this, with the path of this program, 1 to 5? That's quantitative data. And the number of people who are engaged, that's quantitative data. From those offices, those are just 2 minor points, but I would never consider interview and focus groups and file chart reviews to be only qualitative.
Yeah, I could see how some file chart reviews could be quantitative, especially if you're looking at the entire
Population. Target
population.
group.
I do see how you're saying that demographics of focus groups, but I feel like the information we pull from focus groups specifically is going to be qualitative. But yes, the demographic data that we collect, so many people showed up, all of that is important for reporting. I don't know, Melissa, do you have a different perspective on that?
I mean, I wouldn't get too caught up in this. I think that, for the most part, you're going to get qualitative data from, usually interviews and focus groups. The data that's going to be meaningful is the qualitative data. But like Camille said, absolutely, there's quantitative things you want to be collecting. And Mariah, in the situation that you're talking about, if you have 50 key people, you have all your people in your, already at your meeting, then yes, their responses are going to be meaningful. So this is really a guide, about, if you're looking for qualitative information, where would you look? That's all. It wasn't meant to be a
restrictive,
a straitjacket.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand if you were making a restriction on that. I wanted to understand why, because quantitative data is so critical to funders and for
Right.
reporting case studies. Okay, thank you very much.
And then I think Loretta, could you stop the share, Camille?
Yeah.
So Loretta has had her hand up for a while.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So my work is centering on professional development for teachers on integrating standards-based instruction and culturally responsive teaching. And one of the things that I was thinking about is how to quantify cultural and linguistic identities. So I'm just wondering if it would make sense to do a survey.
Can I have a question, I guess. Do you have predetermined cultural and linguistic identities, or do you know which those are yet?
Yeah, I guess we could. That's that was part of my question. I guess I was thinking along the same lines that I would need to get some information from the district, I guess, about demographics.
Oh, so Loretta, you have a population of teachers and you want to know what their identities are. Is that right?
Theirs and So one of my evaluation questions is, how are teachers engaging students' cultural and linguistic identities in STEAM courses at the high school level? And so I'm just trying to figure that out, because there's any identity associated with the Latin community is complex, right? So yeah, do you guys kind of see why I'm struggling a little? It's meaty.
Yeah, so if it's your participants, then you know, maybe at intake you would have, you know, a more detailed kind of you know, if people are signing up for your program, that's a great time to ask them a bunch of things. And you know, or it could be part of an exercise if it's, you know, I think Camille's question gets at, you know, are there already predetermined, or are people going to, you know, identify themselves in different ways? It could be open-ended. And yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question. And we're now at our time to break out. But before the breakout rooms happen, there's always a breakout room for your facilitator. And Loretta, I encourage you to go and ask your facilitator to get started. But if we could go back, actually, I think I have it. I'm gonna share it just so that everyone can get hang on, sorry. Just so everyone can get situated in terms of what's happening now. Okay, not that. Okay, what's happening now is that we've got this template available, and Caitlin has put that, if you don't mind, Caitlin, just copying that link again. The link will take you to our website here. And then if you click on the April 14th, you will get this as a PDF or a Word document to start to fill out. So that's what we're going to ask you to do as you go into your breakout rooms. And let's just look at the schedule so that we're clear on that. No, sorry. I know I have the schedule here. All right, here it is. Okay, so we're just at 1:40 now. You'll have until 2:05 to start to put together that exercise, and we will be available to you in the breakout rooms. Are there any questions about what the next step is here? Okay, Caitlin, let us go into our breakout rooms. So go to your organization or come into the facilitator room, your choice. And but we're at 3:00. What time are we getting back together? I think at 3. Sorry. At 2:10, we'll be back in the debrief rooms. So those are the things to know. 2:10. Right now, we're going to be working on the template, and then at whatever number I just said. What did I say? 2:10. Back with your facilitators.
In the brief room.
All right. Thanks, Caitlin. So the breakout rooms are ready. You can just click on breakout room at the bottom.
Melissa, I don't have a team today.
So you can come into the breakout room with me.
Okay.
I don't see a breakout room opening yet.
I mean, you.
So you need to click on the breakout room, and it has like a little red thing at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm familiar with seeing them. I'm not getting it on my screen at all.
Once you click on that, you should have.
I don't have breakout room on my screen as an option.
I actually
Full view, even full screen. Do
I
you
don't
guys?
either.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, you don't have it either? There's a bunch of people who don't have it? Huh, okay. So Caitlin, do you want to close them and reopen them?
It might be a sign-in issue for the apps.
Oh.
Can you check now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I see it now.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
it showed up.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're all back. Oh, sorry, I got way off on the presentation. Okay. So we are here. So a couple of things we wanted to do to close this out was I want to see if people are, I'd like to have people share some ideas that they had about data collection. And then I'd also like folks to, at the same time, put a few words in the chat that describe your main takeaway from the session. And so I think that will also help us have a conversation. So actually, let me give you a few, just a minute or two to write some words into the chat, and then we'll open it up. Okay, so if folks can add, you don't have to have a sentence, it can just be a few words as well. That will help us get the discussion going. Okay, so is there anyone who would like to share some idea that you came up with, or some idea, something that you found helpful, or something you're going to use going forward?
I'll just dive in and say that, that retrospective survey is something that I'll develop in the next couple of weeks for implementation, probably early May. And so I can report back on whether it was how it worked, I guess. But that was something I think it's going to be really useful and in something I would not have thought of otherwise.
Okay, thanks, Zach. I know that in our group, we were talking about kids getting survey or getting information from children. And I just wanted to share with the whole group that kids are great informants because they're not trying to protect your feelings. And so, and that the piece that, or that visual that Camille shared with you, that was from a real survey that was done pre and post of kids in a summer camp. And it was with adults, sometimes you see, and teenagers, you see them just checking down the middle or whatever. But these kids were really, they're very good informants. So just to keep that in mind. And one other thing I want to share from our group was Elizabeth from Peak that's a program where they collect drawings from kids after they go on a field trip, and thinking about how to use that to what do you do with that data, and how I wanted to mention that in June we're going to have the echo session is going to be on coding qualitative data, and how that's an incredibly rich source of information about it. Often you can use what children draw or anyone draws to an open-ended response to really get a feel for how people experienced a program. So that's really cool. Is there anyone who'd like to report back from the other groups, including the facilitators?
We had a pretty good discussion on, and Loretta, correct me at any moment, on how when you cannot collect data directly, how you can use focus group to ask people outside their setting and obtain that information there. And Loretta was talking about doing focus groups, because she was thinking of quantitative data at first, but just doing focus groups with teachers and students. And learn more about them.
Yeah, I can't, again, like Claudia and I are both trained as economists, and I think we're both like, oh, like the kind of information you can get just by asking people is so much richer and so much more valuable. Oh, I shouldn't say that, but I think I'm going to say it anyway. Well, it's valuable in a different way. It can be incredibly valuable. And the one thing that we didn't talk about, and I don't even know if it comes up in our curriculum, but I have found that the questions that we ask you each month are incredibly valuable to us. What went well and what would you change? So those are like pluses and deltas, and it's hugely helpful to hear back. And I've done this in numerous settings, very, very simple, and that's on a survey that's qualitative data that we can't get just by you like choosing from a pre-filled options. So what about the other groups? Anyone want to share?
I can share something about the Immigrant Law Center, that it became clear to me that they will be interviewing students periodically as their protocol. And so basically they will have multiple interviews that will cover some standard questions and then some exceptional things that are happening. And then that's an ongoing process to track the progress that they ultimately want to know, how these students are faring at the end of the process. But there will be a lot of data to code and make sense out of, because these will be interviews and periodically done with dozens of students. So that's a couple of dozen students. So that's a lot of data to deal with. And if somebody has any ideas about that.
Actually, Zach had an idea in our group about that.
I did. Tell me
Yeah,
more.
you're like, get some high school students to do the
Oh,
coding.
yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, getting qualitative data is, it's very time consuming to review. And I think we've done it in different ways. We've done like, you know, just we're going to set aside a day on a weekend to do it. I mean, it is a tremendous amount of work to do the coding. And then we've worked with people and organizations who have participated in the coding, but done it, you know, done it more quickly. And so I don't know, I actually eval team, I feel like we really need to think about that. Like the qualitative data can be so rich, and at the same time, it can take so much time that it makes it really hard to like put it into a schedule that when it's going to happen. And I do feel like that's going to be a really good discussion for the Echo. And I'm going to alert Charla that those are things that we need to discuss. I am punting on that because I think that that's really an open question on how to do it. I guess one thing I could say is that if you've coded very carefully once, then you may have a set of codes that you can look for, and that makes it much much quicker than trying to think of what code, how would I interpret this piece of text if you already have code set up.
Right. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else, maybe from Camille's group, want to share?
One of the things that came up in our group was the word focus group and how that might be intimidating to certain groups. And so the idea of what do we call it, you know, so that it's more inviting. Also, so Explorer works a lot with kids, and so they do a lot of different work where, you know, they have to find different ways to evaluate with this population, and so it forces them to be more creative and step outside the box. So they came up with some good ideas. Jeanette, Kristen, do you want to talk about those?
I can talk about it. Since some of our like evaluation things are, do people enjoy certain exhibits or enjoyed their visit overall? And since we work a lot with children and families are coming through, we thought of anything as quickly as like the smiley face kind of ranking, you know, the like stoplight method with smiley faces, because that's a quick addition. Like you could just quickly, you know, tap a button or tap an iPad and like in and out. And if they do have a minute and they're lingering, we can have a staff there that can ask, oh, why did you have a good time? Or what can we do to make your visit better? At the same time, if we have new exhibits, we have interns that take care of certain areas, and they can walk around, and if families are particularly like enjoying themselves, approach them and say like, oh, it looks like you guys are having fun. You know, can I ask what is it that you're enjoying out of this, and just take like a simple note during their experience. But we've also stated, when I was talking with Camille, Kristen and I were talking, is that we do get teams currently for focus groups, and because they're there for listening sessions or focus groups, they immediately want to give us the right answer. They want to appease us. And we realize that to get them to loosen up and for us to give them their opinion, we play games around the subject. So we wanted opinions on certain things. We wanted them to describe things to us. So we played games that required descriptions, like charades, what's in the bag, descriptive games, and then tie that into this listening session is going to be tied into you describing to us what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. And then Camille suggested the interactive focus group echo for us just to kind of participate in that. So those are some of the things we discussed.
Great, thanks so much. So I also want to highly encourage everyone to come on Tuesday to the session on interactive focus groups. And it's interesting, I agree that focus group is not what you want to do. I'm telling you, you do want to do an interactive focus group because they're really fun, and we need to come up with another name for that. All right, so in the interest of time, I want to move on to just the next slide on what's coming up. And I want to give Claudia a chance to, let me go through this, and then I wanted to give Claudia a chance to tell you more about the expo. So what are you working on now in your mission time? I would say if you have ideas for your data collection tools, work on those because you can start to put them into practice pretty quickly. Coming up on Tuesday, again, interactive focus groups, and we've got 2 shares set up from this group, I believe. And then in May, we're going to talk about how to really embed your evaluation so that it's just routine, it's always happening. And Caitlin, if you could put the expo link into the chat, and let me give Claudia a second to tell you about that.
All right. So next Friday on April 22 at 2:30, we will have little get together. We're very excited because we've spent the last 2 semesters doing evaluation with 4 nonprofit partners, and we are showing our results. And we want to do it in a way that is community building. The students, the teams, the organizations will present their findings, but we also have time to just meet other organizations, hear how they're doing. So if you want to come, it's just it's really an event to learn a little bit about evaluation, hear what everybody's doing, and just get to see each other's faces again. We're very excited. We've been doing online events, and I'm just so excited to see people again in person. It is an open space. If that's a concern, I know many of us are still worried about this. It's not totally gone. So we're trying to make it as safe as possible. And of course, we'll have food.
Food.
Food. And we'll have it at UNM in the University Club. And I think if you click the Eventbrite, that's just for us to have a head count to have more food if we need it. But you're all welcome to join.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Okay, so I think we're about done. So please go ahead and take our survey. We really appreciate, this has been a wonderful group. You've been sticking with it. It's just a few minutes, I hope, and we get to see what we're doing and how we can improve. So if you could take the time to do that. And in the meantime, the facilitators can be here for a few minutes if you have questions. And thank you all who put your thoughts into the chat. We really appreciate that. We'll see you next time pretty soon.